Welcome to the Swine Health Black Belt Podcast, the latest swine health research digested for you. My name's Dr. Clayton Johnson, and I'm the host of the podcast. Joining me in our podcast studios this week is Dr. John McGlone. Dr. McGlone's a professor at Texas Tech University. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
John, I know you've been in the industry quite some time, and we share some Illini roots, but for anybody out there in the audience who hasn't had the pleasure, would you mind giving a little introduction and some background on yourself?
Sure. I did my undergraduate and master's at Washington State University, my Ph.D. at the University of Illinois. I graduated long before you did. My advisor was 𝗕𝗃𝗽𝗏𝗿𝗏𝗃, who some of the older people would remember as a very outgoing individual. It had a large positive impact on the industry. And then I spent 3 years at University of Wyoming before I came here. I was the extension swine specialist in there when the industry was growing the small amount that it grew. And then I came to Texas Tech in a research and teaching position 39 years ago.
Very good. You know, Dr. Curtis was famous for the 5 freedoms. Amongst a lot of the work that he did, that was certainly something he kind of pushed out as what welfare meant to him. I know you're passionate about welfare, John. What's welfare mean to you?
I'm advocating lately that we quit talking about animal welfare. We stop talking about it. Don't even use the words anymore. I think we should be talking about behavioral management of the pig. And that when we manage their behavior, then their welfare is fine. Okay? And we could measure behavior. We could measure physiology and health, a few other things, but we can't measure welfare. We can't even get people to agree on a definition of welfare. With all these welfare standards, yet one person thinks it means something different than another person. But nobody is confused about when the sow is eating. She's eating, she's not eating. We can see that. She's fighting, she's not fighting. We understand how to manage their behavior. And when we manage their behavior appropriately, their welfare, by anybody's definition, will be improved. So that's kind of a different story. Now, associated with that, in the European Union, they passed a law or regulation a few years ago saying that environmental enrichment is required for all pigs in the EU. Smithfield has made a commitment in the future to provide environmental enrichment to all their pigs. The country of Brazil 2 years ago adopted a new animal welfare law that says environmental enrichment is required. And environmental enrichment is just like welfare in that nobody can define it. We don't know what it means. At the same time, the pig is bored. That causes behavior problems. So during the pandemic, I was working on pheromones, and I was wondering why people are not adopting them as excitedly and enthusiastically as I think they should, because they're natural compounds and they improve the behavior of the animals. See how you can use behavior, not welfare, and it actually makes a little more sense. You know, you can reduce fighting in pigs with a pheromone. That might improve their welfare, but the point is you're reducing fighting. Anyway, so I thought, okay, that's one problem. Then during the pandemic, it became very obvious very quickly that we had a labor shortage in swine production. In fact, many people have said, including me, that the labor shortage is the number one problem in pork production right now. There's a farm near us. At one time, they're bigger now, but they had 250 people that were employees, but they could never find more than 200 people. They could never have all the jobs filled, which put stress on the other people. So another problem is, besides labor efficient, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough qualified people. The people that are working out there are not very good at what they're doing. And it's physically hard and mentally challenging to have a well-managed pig farm. And so you can't have I mean, you wind up with people who are not very good, but that's only because that's all we have, right? So there's a labor shortage. The second thing is, this is to all my veterinary friends out there, the U.S. pig herd is sick. And the best way to improve the sickness is to have the animals self-administer animal health drugs. And so we did a study where we developed an environmental enrichment device that the pig can play with whenever they want. It's up off the ground, it's clean, it accommodates their natural rooting, chewing, pushing behaviors without having straw or some other kind of material on the floor that's going to have a problem. And then that environmental enrichment device you can use to do a number of things. You could put a pheromone in there to change their behavior. You could put a vaccine in there so they can self-administer a vaccine. And we have a beautiful paper where Rebecca Robbins is the first author, where we had pigs self-vaccinate for salmonella, and we got better efficacy with them self-vaccinating than us hand-drenching them. So now it would take one person just a few minutes to just add the vaccine to these sprayers and let the pigs vaccinate themselves. It solves the environmental enrichment problem, improves the animal's health. And so our goal now is to see how many different kinds of vaccines this method will be effective with. Because we know salmonella makes sense, ileitis makes sense. We only tested salmonella so far, but ileitis makes sense. I think influenza makes sense because they squirt a lot up their nose. Some of them actually drink out of the sprayer through their nose. And other disease vaccine we have to test just to see. But the idea is that in the smart farm of the future, you're going to be able to sit in your office. You're going to have a biosensor that's going to tell you that pigs have disease X in this barn. You're going to flip a switch, and they're going to be vaccinated with zero human effort. And the efficacy will be better than if people self-administered or people hand-administered or water-treated the pig, any number of other options. And certainly much, much less labor than going around and sticking every pig with a needle.
What are the biggest barriers between that future state, John, and where we're at today? Are there any technology barriers with creating the administration device or, whatever the pig would interact with to receive that vaccination? Or is it really more just a mindset problem that we as producers have to be open to those technologies? They exist today. We just need to apply them.
There really are no technical problems with what we call the sprayer. It will be modified over time, of course, to make it better, and maybe cheaper. But there's no technical problems with the sprayer. There's no technical problems with getting the pigs to use the pheromone, use the sprayer, because we can put an attractive pheromone in the sprayer, and they'll come up and use it immediately. So in our study with salmonella, we had the maternal pheromone in the solution, and so when we put the vaccine in there, all the pigs in the pen self-vaccinated within 80 minutes.
Okay.
Because they were interested in going over there. Again, it's a way of managing behavior to improve the health of the animal without any human effort to speak of.
Yep.
So it's a new concept. So you should be able to you have a tail biting incident, you can put a pheromone on there. You want to develop guilt, you can put a sex pheromone in there. You want to vaccinate them, you can put the vaccine in there. Now the environmental enrichment device pays for itself many times over, especially with the savings in labor.
JBI helps swine producers fight against harmful pathogens with the forming power of D7 disinfectant. JBI helps treat or prevent costly outbreaks and assure eco-friendly biosecurity on farm and transport. Safe and effective against PED, 𝗕𝗄𝗃𝗃, E. coli, salmonella, and other illness-causing pathogens. D7 is non-toxic, providing a safer environment for your employees, low corrosive to equipment, and breaks down biofilms. Learn more at jbidistributors.com.
Very good. Very good. It's very interesting information. And John, I want to thank you for coming on the show. To our audience, thank you very much for listening to the Swine Health Black Belt podcast. Please check us out at swinehealthblackbelt.com. But don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share it with a friend if you enjoyed it. We'd love to have you join us back next week for our next episode as well. For Dr. John McGlone, I'm Dr. Clayton Johnson. Thanks very much, John, for coming on the podcast. Very interesting, and we hope to have you on again to talk about some more application of pheromones and various different olfactory incentives.
We'll set that up. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Have a great rest of your day.
Hey, everyone. We're always searching for the latest and greatest research to share each week. If you have a swine health-related research trial and would like to come on the show to talk about it with me and share it with our audience, feel free to send an email to healthblackbelt@swineit.com, and we would love to take a look at your research.